Welcome to Life Devotions. I'm Robert Maasbach. I have to think about a man in the Bible that was famous. It was King Hezekiah. King Hezekiah, he built great aqueducts for water to come into the city of Jerusalem. He did all kinds of phenomenal things. He was a man that was quite well known because he had all these dramatic experiences with God. One time he was attacked with an enormous army that mocked God and said that God would never be able to save them if they put their trust in him. And that offended the Lord, I think, because that night an angel of God came and slew 185,000 soldiers. And that king who had risen up against Hezekiah went home with his tail between his legs, so to speak. He was a defeated foe. And you know, we need to be careful not to be haughty against the Lord, but to be humble and to honor him and to respect him and not to doubt his goodness towards us. But Hezekiah had all these experiences and still he had suffered an illness. And that illness was so strong that it was killing him. And his good friend Hezekiah, with whom he had his good friend Isaiah, with whom he had prayed so many times and was such a powerful man of God, came to visit him and said, "Hey Hezekiah, God has shown me that you got to get your house in order because you're going to die and not live." And then Isaiah left him. You know, Hezekiah could have laid back and said, "Okay, that's the end of it then." But he didn't. We often can get a report that allows us to wake up to how serious a situation is, and we could lay back and say, "Well, there's nothing I could do." Or we can respond like King Hezekiah did. King Hezekiah was laying on his bed so ill he could not walk, and he turned his face to the wall and began to weep and weep. And in his weeping he cried out to God and said, "Lord, remember how I've loved you, how I've served you, how I've lived before you in what is right in your sight. Please, Lord, have mercy upon me." And before Isaiah could get out of the palace courts, God spoke to him and said, "Return. Tell King Hezekiah, I've seen your tears, I've heard your cry, and I've added many years to your life." And you know, God turned that situation around. But I think it's one of the biggest healing miracles in the Bible. You know why? Because Hezekiah said to Isaiah the prophet, "How will I know that I will heal from this?" And you know, God could have said, "How can you dare doubt my word?" No, God didn't. God encouraged his faith and said, "I will cause the sun to move back on its place." And as Hezekiah watched, the sundial turned back 10 degrees. This was no small miracle. And friends, God wants to prove his healing power to you today in no small measure. He is a good God. And if we humble our hearts before him and cry out to him, he will hear us and answer us and restore health to us. I want to encourage you today, if you're suffering with some illness, don't you sit back and say, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it." But cry out to God and believe in his goodness and mercy. And I believe today the Lord take away all illness from you and restore your health so that you can be a great witness of his mercy and goodness to others who need him so much. Expect it today.